right, welcome back to the second half of the Blueprints Brocast. I'm Austin Tokar.
My name is Jay Cruz.
And here we're going to talk about staying in a relationship.
Yeah, the last one was like, hey, how, like in today's day and age, how do you get into a relationship? But now you're in it. Like, how the heck do you stay in it? What do you think? Well,
Simple,
you know what?
man.
Actually,
No. We can make this episode really short right now. You just stay. You just stay. You don't do it.
that's all, folks. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks
We're
for
done.
coming.
We're done. There's no other options. You got to make it work. But no, really though, it ends up being like that. If you really, really like this person, and they're not a psycho, you don't find out anything weird later on in there. You just work with what you got and make it happen. That's broadly what it comes down to.
I feel like we sort of like surface level covered this, and we talked about somewhere way long time ago, expectations, like having expectations when you go in.
Yeah.
As long as you outline the expectations of what your relationship is supposed to be, then at least you have a foundation of like, hey, we said this, that we were going to be like this, and we were going to do this, and this is where we were going. Like, you hold each other accountable, like, hey, how are we going towards that? People, I think the number one reason why people separate is infidelity and money, the two biggest things. So the money thing is like, people will disagree with this all day long, but if you have all of your assets and everything you have separate, like, oh, she has her bank account, I have my bank account, and we pay for everything separately, she handles this and I handle this, you have your bank account separated. So the ability to separate is so much easier, because it's like, oh, well, let's just go our separate ways. I have my stuff, you have your stuff, boom, we'll just go. Mm-hmm. Before Julie and I were married, like 4 months before, we put our bank account together. And it's like, hey, everything is ours, and we budget together and we spend together, and I can see what you spend on. I can see what I spend on. I have a friend that had a wife that he ended up having, like, he was scared to get paid because he had no idea, like, oh, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to get paid Friday. I'm going to go back to work Monday, and I'll have zero money because over the weekend, my wife blows it on whatever.
Yeah.
So they didn't have an expectation of like, hey, let's logically think about this. We have kids. We have bills. Don't just blow it on, spa and whatever else you do for no reason.
Yeah.
But he's already married to her. Like, he's already gotten into it. But this goes back to what we were talking about before. He only got married because he got her pregnant early and before they were married. And then he just felt like, oh, this is the right thing to do. So now I'm just going to get married to you. Again, there's no foundation laid, no expectations. And now you're just like, hey, the baby's the only thing keeping us together. So whatever happens, happens. And this is what happens. And then he finds out after they've been married for years that she has a drug problem, like where she would go like, oh, I'm going out with girls. And these are girls that are supposed to be, upstanding citizens, but they're over there just doing cocaine. I don't know. Do you do cocaine? Do you take cocaine? Do you sniff? Like, how do you?
You could do a lot of things with cocaine. I'll tell you right now.
I don't know what you say that you don't do cocaine, but they were doing.
You could do cocaine.
Okay, they were doing lines,
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, like, I had no idea. I actually had a friend that told me that this was going on. So again, this goes back to like, you stay together by having a good foundation of like, we had the common things that we're both interested in, but then we had this common goal that we're going to together. Like, you can't both decide 5 months into it, oh, we're fighting. Oh man, let's talk about how we stay together. I mean, if you already didn't have that intent to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. And it caught me off guard with that. It's kind of a deep story there.
Oh yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, cocaine abuse.
Wait, we went from nothing to like way up here.
Yeah. I
Escalated.
thought we were talking about staying in relationships. Now this lady's on cocaine. Like, what?
Yeah, that's real life though, man.
Yeah. Well, to bring it back to a
More sane level.
more sane level, normal level. So when you first get into a relationship with someone, in your mind, your idea is like, I'm going to stay with this person. That's how you got to be. That has to be at the forefront of your head. You can't think like, okay, what if I break up? That at that point, you shouldn't be thinking like that. Like you can't think of like second options in there. Like if that happens, it happens, but deal with the situation as it is right now. I'm in a relationship. How can I best create something that I want in this relationship? So like you're talking about, set expectations, where you want to go, how you're going to be, but that joint bank account thing, I still like the 3 bank account idea.
Oh, 3 bank account. Yeah, for sure.
You each have your own, and then you have a joint one.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Obviously, that's going to be the bigger one. But yeah, you figure out like things as soon as possible. Because again, like we talked about in the last episode, you don't want to keep putting off getting married and being with that person for the rest of your life. You want to make sure like things are established almost as soon as possible. That doesn't mean rush things. That just means be quick to get things established for yourself. I was going to ask, like, how did you guys, when you first started dating, what was your thought process going to that?
I think I wanted to get married since I was 15, and I was a one woman man. And when I was young, I decided that I wasn't going to date in high school. So I never pursued girls, because most high school relationships, I mean, they don't end in marriage. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to waste my time.
Yeah.
Heartbreak either for her or me. I'm not going to deal with all that. And so like I made a habit of not pursuing women, and at pretty much every single girl that's ever come into my life has pursued me. And then I'm just like, am I down with this? Am I cool with this? Like, let me get to know you a little bit. And then, I acted from there. So, just for her and me, it's knowing, where we wanted to go, but also like me, I just was like, I have my guard up all the time. Like, oh, you're trying to come into my life. I'm wanting to go somewhere. Are you going to add to my life, or are you going to take away from it? Are you going to prevent me from going to where I want to go?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying like, oh, like you got to be, well, no, I am saying you have to be a certain type of person for me to even give you my time, because I don't want to waste my time.
Yeah.
And I want to know, what's your history? I want to know that. Like you said, find out stuff early, find out things beforehand.
Yeah.
I think our question is like, how do you stay together? But our question should be to ourselves, like, how do we answer this is, well, what is it that breaks people up?
Yeah.
And we talked about the money thing, but I like what you said. You said the 3 bank account thing. To expound on what that is each person has like an allotted spending cash. They can do whatever they want with it, no questions asked. But then all the rest of the money goes into a joint for the bills and for investment and stuff like that. And then you just have your 2 where you never have to ask them permission to do whatever. You can just do it because you have the money.
One's for family, one's for play.
Yeah.
However you want to say that.
I think the good part about that too is when I want to buy a gift, because it's really hard to buy gifts for somebody if they can see the bank account, and you buy something for them, they're like, ooh, well, I know what's coming, So it's a good thing for that reason.
So you pull up cash. Cash.
So the only reason why I say that we had a fully joint bank account was I personally never wanted the opportunity to spend money on things that weren't good for me.
Yeah.
I watched a podcast, and it was with Larry Wheels, where he talked about he blew $10,000 a day, I think, or something like that, or something.
He said thousands, just thousands of dollars.
Yeah, thousands of dollars towards pornography, and I'm like, dude, I don't want to give myself the opportunity to spend money on dumb stuff.
Yeah.
So I want her to see everything that I do. So that's why it's just a level of accountability for me that I didn't trust myself to just spend money on whatever. So like, I'm like, I just want you to see everything I spend my money on. Mm-hmm. Now that I'm more mature, we probably can. I do have I have a PayPal account where all of my business stuff goes into there. So technically that's like my money like that. But in terms of like all of our other money, it does go in a joint account. So it was for accountability reasons. So that's why I did it.
Yeah. And you have to figure out what works for you on a personal level. I haven't gone that far yet. We each have our own account. But I guess, and Faith was telling me, in the state of Texas, once you've lived together for like a year, I think, you're considered, what is it called? I don't know, communal marriage or something like that.
Common law marriage?
Common law marriage, that's what it is.
Man, but that's not recognized when you do taxes. It's not recognized.
Wait, oh shoot, what was I saying? But for state taxes, it is, right?
Dude, I don't know. I just know if it's not recognized by God, I'm I'm kind of like not.
Nah, bro, we're talking about money here.
Hey,
God doesn't like money in the first place, right? So
it's the root of all kinds of evil.
yeah,
But yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look into that. But there's like some crazy stuff. Like they're doing tax breaks for people that have a bunch of kids too. So I'm like, I got to look into these tax things a little bit better.
yeah, that one's
especially
cool.
especially because Texas. Because so once you buy a house, you can claim it as like homestead.
Yeah.
And you get 10% off of your not income tax, but your state, not your real estate tax.
Yeah.
So
Those bring it back. Let's talk about boundaries.
yeah.
So when you get in a relationship and you're trying to hold that together, what kind of boundaries do you set?
Boundaries. I think my boundaries, I more recently now, so I've gotten to this group of guys that is like, it's called Better Man, and we're trying to become better men through accountability with each other and speaking into each other's lives, but also just like opening, like letting your life be an open book to somebody else. And telling somebody else all your dirt gives them an opportunity to ask you questions. And so like, if you're not good at setting boundaries or don't know what boundaries are, somebody else can speak into your life and say, hey, like, I don't think this is a good idea. Like if you're someone that doesn't know boundaries, like for me, I don't have, man, speaking about boundaries, I have to be better about boundaries because like for sure,
Yeah.
because I'm not someone that picks up cues very well. I've never picked up cues like when a woman's interested in me. Like I'm kind of dumb in that sense. So someone could be throwing things at me, and I'm innocently like responding back to them, like, oh yeah, like this one lady was asking me about fitness and coaching and stuff like that. And she's like, hey, can I send you progress pics? And I'm like, yeah, sure, you can send me progress pics, and I can, give you my opinion on your program and what you're doing and if you should stay with that coach or whatever. And then she sends me photos that were, I don't know how to describe these photos, but they were a little bit more than progress pics. And I was like, immediately just like block, like, okay, maybe I missed something that she was saying.
Yeah.
And she was, it wasn't really, whatever it was. So, just boundaries in that sense. Like it's probably better that I just say like a rule, like, hey, I'm just not going to coach women because of what it requires. And it does require like, hey, I need to see progress pics on what you're doing. And then maybe on top of that, tell them like, hey, I need you to have clothes on for these pics. Otherwise,
see, that's setting boundaries right there.
yeah. And I think it's just being upfront with people. I had I'm not ready to talk about some things like right now, because it's things that like I think I would have to tell Julie so that she's not surprised. She doesn't listen to this podcast anyways.
Where's your main support system?
No,
she
she
does
does.
views and listens.
No, she does. But I had someone at work come on to me, and I figured it out too late. But then I was like, no, hey, like maybe I said something to you that you took wrong, or maybe I'm just too nice or whatever it is. And I had to just be like, like, hey, like, no, this isn't like, that's not what this is. And I basically just try not to be alone, like is a good boundary.
Yeah.
And things that you wouldn't do with a friend, like a guy friend.
Yeah.
Like if you do it with a guy, that's even.
That goes back to that one. Whatever way you swing,
No, because some guys they're just dumb with each other. Like like my kids, they're at school, and the boys in California, they just act stupid with each other, and they have like games that they play that are like really, I mean, there's no way to describe it, but they're really like borderline like homosexual games that they play with each other. So like I can't say like, oh, whatever you do with your guy friend.
Pretty gay, bro.
Yeah, it was. So I'm trying to like lay down a guideline or a border here or boundary, but like me having a hard time to even explain that says a lot, in that it moves. It's like a moving target.
Well, you could say, that your boundaries are ever, being created constantly. Like, okay, I'm gonna limit myself here, which those are all boundaries. Like when you say I need to pull back, I need to push forward a little bit, those are changing your boundaries in there. So it's not just like set in stone. Those are always going to change.
Yeah.
Depending on different phases of your life. If you see that you're more, let's just say you're in a phase where you feel more tempted than other phases, like for some reason, you might need to set a stronger boundary in one area than the other. It doesn't have to be sexually. It could just be like with money. Like I'm more tempted to spend, I got to set that boundary because I don't want to pull from our house fund.
Yeah.
When I'm already like spent all my funds,
Yeah.
gambling, that kind of stuff,
Yeah, that's a good example, because I was just thinking like with people, like boundaries, but it's also finances too. But I think that boundaries should very rarely, like almost never, lessen.
Yeah. Once
you set a boundary, you set it there for a reason. You don't all of a sudden start cutting the fence down so you can see over the fence a little bit more. You leave it up. I would love to hear a logical argument on why you would strip a boundary away. It just shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
If it was good at one time, it's still probably good today.
Yeah. I think you have to also consider the other person, what their tolerance level is and what they even really care about. Because for Faith, like I'm a flirter. Like that's just, it's not intentional. It's just like it carries a conversation and makes it a little bit more fun than like, it's like flamboyant flirting. You know what I mean?
No, I don't.
You don't know what that?
Whenever I think of flamboyant, I only think of one thing.
Yeah. Well, flamboyant flirting with girls, it's just like you're that gay guy in their group, whatever. You're just making it fun, right? That kind of deal. Not like,
okay.
Like, hey, how you doing? Not like, the typical guy talks. It's like when they walk up to the girl in the gym, like, oh, so what you working out? That's boring, bro.
Yeah.
You gotta say something else like, you working that booty?
Oh yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So, Faith doesn't really care because she knows like I'm kind of set in stone with where our relationship is because we've tried a bunch of different things, right? And we kind of found an area where we're both kind of like the happy midline of like, okay, I know that's gonna hurt me, so we're not gonna go near there, and I know this doesn't really bother me, so you can go as far as this carries you, right? So if I do that, Faith's not the type of person to get like jealous or anything like that. It's just not her personality. Like we've talked about it multiple times, and just like, it doesn't really bother me. And when people are like, well, maybe it does bother her, she's just not telling you. No, like when you really look at her, she's just like, nah, I don't care.
Yeah. When you talk about that flirting, I don't. You call it flirting, but for me, like
it's just what we perceive as flirting. You know what I mean?
When I do that, but I do it with men and women equally. I do the same thing, but it just appears completely different with a woman.
It sounds like you're
No. So this is what I'm saying. Like I joke with somebody, but it appears as flirting. Like if I have a waiter and it's a dude or whatever, he's saying something to me. Like I say something funny just so like he knows like, hey, I'm cool with you. You can serve the table however you need. I'm not going to be this dude that's just going to be a jerk to you. Like I lighten the mood for them to help them feel more comfortable. I would do the same thing for a male that I would for a woman when it's a waitress. But for some reason, I'll get in trouble. Like it's saying the same thing. Like it could be the same thing.
But you do want to let people know you're not stiff, right?
Yeah.
So you're just like, let's line up the situation. Like, what can I say to lighten it up? And it could be the dorkiest thing ever. Yeah. But it makes you more presentable to other people.
Yeah. So it's just like what you said. You have to figure out like, hey, what bothers my spouse or my significant other, but then also how much so you've built enough confidence in Faith that she's okay with that. And that's the issue. I find that you have to be a better confidence builder. Like if you haven't built the trust and built this foundation of like, hey, I'm not going anywhere. You're the only one. Like, it's not an issue. It won't be an issue. But the moment you do make it an issue, man, trust is like the hardest thing to like get back. It's one moment of something stupid, but then it's years of like building back this, you can, what is the thing?
Hard to come, easy to go.
Yeah. Yeah. You can build bridges all your life and you do one wrong thing and now you're not a bridge builder,
Yeah. Yeah. But that's about setting boundaries. So I think the first lesson here is like set boundaries with your significant other, wherever that person is. Make sure you have like a good a firm grounding of where you're at. Like you understand each other. Like this is what I like, and this is what I don't like we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next part? What do you think is?
Well, we talked about finances a little bit, but like physically,
let's just say someone's in a longer term relationship. Let's say they're not married yet.
Okay.
How do you keep that going to get to the point of marriage?
Man, you have to discover that person over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
Like you initially, it's like, okay, what's their favorite color? What's their favorite snack? What is their favorite place to eat? Where's the, and then you like, it depends, because somebody is like, maybe somebody loves gifts. So you're like, you find those things out about that person, and you're like, without them asking, you buy them their favorite snack or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. For some people, they love just quality time, just like hanging out. So you just have to make sure, like, hey, let's just go to the beach, and like, well, not here in Texas, but when we were in California, hey, let's just talk, let's just hang out.
You go to the beach in Texas?
Yeah, it's 3 hours away. Well, for you, it's closer. But
barely.
For me, it's 3 hours.
It's not the nicest beach either.
No. I mean, you can't compare to Monterey beaches.
Yeah.
But it just depends. You got to discover them and know them. The dangerous one is when their love language or the way that they receive love is physical touch. That's the dangerous one. You kind of have to like, hey, this could escalate real fast, too fast. Mm-hmm. So you have to be careful with that one. But the other ones is like just quality time, gift giving, acts of service. Sometimes you're
talking about the 5 attributes of love, or
the 5 love languages. I mean, there's more than that too, because food.
Oh, there's lots of things. Bro.
Food is my, part of my love language when I'm hungry. And
no, but that counts as acts, doesn't it? Like,
acts of service.
Like, oh, I took you here, or I made you this, that kind of deal.
Yeah, understanding that about somebody, it goes a long way. But then you have to understand like the detail and intricateness of it. Maybe there's somebody that, again, this goes back to like daddy issues and things like that. Maybe they had a mom and dad that were really hard on them and never gave them any kind of affirmation or like acknowledge anything that they do, any of their accomplishments, none of that stuff. But that's all they want from you, and that's all it takes for you, and that's an advantage to you. But what if you're not good at that, and you're not good at giving affirmations because it was never given to you, and so you have no idea how to do it, or you just don't care about it, so you don't think about it. You have to understand that, hey, this is what they need, and just understanding what the other person's needs are is a really basic part of staying together. Yeah. But once you find out what it is, you better do it. Yeah. Especially if they tell you specifically, like, hey, I need you to do this. Like, hey, I have a really hard day, and I come home. The first thing I don't need you asking me a bunch of questions about like, things that need to be done around the house, or things that need to be taken care of, or I don't want to hear about your drama.
Yeah.
The very first thing I come in the door, like, I want to relax. I had a hard day at work. And if you're that person that doesn't hear that, and what you have to say is more important, like, oh, I've had a hard day, so you need to listen to me, then that's not going to work. That other person will listen to you. Just give them their time to decompress, and then give them the opportunity to love you back and to just listen to what you have to say, but to give them their space. So listen to them, and then let them, or listen to what they said and give them their space initially. And then if that's something that you need to be able to like work through something mentally with them and to talk something out, then there's a time for that. But like, listen to what their need is, and then like deliver. Yeah. You don't have to be great at it, but you have to at least make an effort to where it shows that you're even trying. If you're not even trying, that frustrates the other person so much. Yeah.
So the 5 different love languages, or 6 or 7, whatever the heck it is. So it's not really the individual acts themselves. It's more of you're communicating something to that person. You're communicating that they're important to you. Like, you pay attention, you're trying, you're listening, you actually care about that person. That's what you're communicating. Whether it's giving them something, they said they like something specifically, you remembered that, you got them it. They're like, oh my gosh, this person really cares. Or, wow, this person really listened to me, he remembered. Or like, when you give that physical touch, whatever, let's say hug or something, they're like, oh, they know, like, this is kind of like how I communicate, is how I like things. That's what you're saying when you're doing any one of those individual things, right? So just don't think of it in a creepy way, though. Like, you push too far, you're like, I gotta memorize all these things, I gotta write them down. Don't write anything down. Yeah. That's where it's getting kind of creepy. Like, then you memorize too much. You wanna learn it. You don't wanna like memorize it, I guess you say. Learn it, not memorize it.
somewhere around there.
Don't make it a chore. That's what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Because when it's a chore, then you don't really care.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other thing too, I think this is even more important thing on how you stay together with somebody is becoming sure and confident in yourself, and the other person being independent and confident in themselves as well. Because you could be somebody that fulfills all those things. Somebody's asking you, like, I need this, I need this, I need this. And you give all of that to them, but then they're not satisfied. They always need more. They always like, oh, like I have to have this. Like I need you to do this. If they can't just be okay with themselves, and like anything you like, they're depending on you to fulfill their happiness and their life and all that stuff. That's not healthy either.
Yeah.
Like, yes, they're with you because they love you and they want those things from you, but they have to be like someone that generally can be satisfied and content. Because if they're not, you can give them the world and it won't be enough. Like, and they have to be someone that can recognize that you're making effort. Because if it's someone that's super self-centered and you don't realize that this person's all about themselves, because here's what guys fall in the trap of, and they don't realize this, is that they're like, man, I want this girl to be in love with me, so I'm going to do everything she asked me to do. I'm going to do all the things. And then at some point you realize, oh, I can do all this stuff, and she is always going to want more. Like you get really far into a relationship because initially you're like, oh, you're just smitten and you're in love with them and the blinders are on. I'm going to do everything. And then when you realize I'm doing everything, I mean, other way around, it could be either way. Obviously it doesn't have to be just the guy. The girl could be doing, the guy could be doing the same thing to her. But someone that's generally like content helps out a lot with a relationship.
Hey, you want and I came by this term from years of gaming, quote unquote, my prime of going out to the bars and talking to women. This is where I learned this comment of interdependency. You want to meet someone who's really cool, but you're also really cool, and you come together and you have a really cool life, right? You each are doing your own thing, but you also could come together and do something together. You don't want to like create a life where you're codependent on people, but you also don't want to be independent of that person. You want to be interdependent. I thought that was the coolest term ever since I heard it. I was like, I got to use that. I constantly use that term all the time when someone asks me about relationships. Interdependency.
Yeah,
it's the first thing that comes to mind.
I think people shouldn't even get into a relationship unless they like have a certain sense of independence, and then like what you said, to become interdependent on somebody means that they add to you, and it like say
build something even greater than yourselves.
Yeah,
basically.
Say like you have a home, but then you want to, and it's a 2-story house or whatever it is, and then you want to build another section of that house that stands up right next to it, and it makes, from the outside, it makes the house look, usually it's like Frankenstein looking, but let's say you do it really well and it looks like this really well built house when both sides are standing together. Even if that side of the house, like together, it looks amazing. Let's say that side falls apart, at least your side is still put together and it looks well. But it looks better when both are high functioning and working together to make that finished look. Yeah. You never want to. There's going to be times, unfortunately, where somebody can get into. I don't know how it happens, but somebody just gets into like a mental space and they fall into depression or anxiety or whatever it is, and you're gonna have to hold them up. But that's why you have to determine, hey, am I willing? Do I know this person enough, and am I willing to go through what it takes to go through whatever with this person, and fight for it? Yeah.
So we had boundaries, we had communication, we had interdependency, I guess you could call it. What's next on that? Similar beliefs, maybe. I guess that would count as boundaries, but you have to have similar beliefs as the other person.
Yeah, I think someone we know, I'm not going to be specific, was dating somebody pretty fast, like pretty quickly, got pretty serious, and then at some point realized, oh, like she believes politically completely different than I do. Like everything else seems cool, but this the one political thing, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, like I don't know if I can live with this. Yeah. But that's one of those very simple things you can find out before you start dating, and then you have to deal with
set the trap.
Yeah. like you don't want to get into a relationship and somebody's on the other side of the fence or the political lines or even just religious beliefs.
Yeah.
Because you have to consider you're not marrying that one person, and you're marrying into their family.
Yeah.
You're not marrying their family, but you're marrying into their family. So you're gonna have to deal with them Thanksgiving, Christmas. You go there and they have a dad that talks about politics the other way, like the complete opposite that you believe, and you have to say like, is this person worth dealing with that? Like.
Well, people have to understand. They'll say like, "Oh, that shouldn't matter." It does matter more than you think because it comes up daily. And if you have something that's aggravating daily, annoys you, or you just like you don't vibe with on a daily, and you have to live with that, and then you go to an environment that's even more heavily in that direction, it's going to mess with you. And at some point, you're going to be like, "I'm sick of this." You're going to blow up.
Yeah,
it's not good for your, I guess, relationship.
Yeah, and some people take the stance of like, oh, well, I'm just not going to take a hard line on anything, and I'm just not going to. It's okay if I, just live with certain things. The thing is that people have to understand is if you don't stand for something, like if you're not like, hey, like this is what I stand for and this is what I believe. If you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for anything. Like you'll get duped into believing whatever or anything if you don't have any like solid beliefs yourself. So that's why you want the other person, like. By all means, I want them to have like strong beliefs in something, because if someone doesn't believe in anything, then they will believe anything.
Well, then some people even say like, no, I really don't care about that. I don't believe whatever. But there's going to be some part of you that's going to feel a certain type of way when something comes up, right? So we'll say politics, we'll say religion, and then your mate might feel something wholeheartedly in another direction, and you're going to say like, oh, we don't care. But when something's talked about, you might say something that's going to pop them off. It's going to happen one way or another eventually.
Yeah, I have we talked about meeting someone that in a bar and they have a drinking problem. I have a friend that in her family they don't drink, none of them drink, but he drinks a ton. When I say a ton, he'll drink a 12-pack in an evening, not a day. In the evening, like it's nothing. Like just drink it, and it's nothing for him. And she doesn't like it, and all these things. But like again, if you know that you don't like it, and you know what someone can become because of that, you have to make those choices beforehand. And that's why like the beliefs and what morals you have all have to be, at least I don't want to give a percentage, but you try to line those things up as much as possible. They have the same ideas that you do about fitness, because that creates strain on a relationship as well. Just all the things, like you think of it, it can be an issue. And we're not saying, oh, like you guys got to fit together like a puzzle piece and be perfectly together. No, you just have to have mostly agreements to most things, and then the rest you have an agreement where you're like, hey, we'll work these out. There'll be compromise, but I'm not going to make it or allow it to come between us.
Yeah.
Because that happens all the time.
Yeah. I think the next part of this would be growth. You have to find something, even on an individual level, you have to keep growing. But in like a relationship, you have to find something together that you can grow together with. Mm-hmm. So whether that be like you want to get better at religion, or some sort of endeavor together. I don't know what that would be. Faith and I, we just make it financial. That's like the easiest one. Like, okay, this is where we want to see ourselves in the future. This is what we want to grow towards. What are ones you and Julie kind of figure out?
I think people should very commonly have like maybe 4 different goals. So there should be like a financial goal. Like, here's what I want to do with finances. So if you marry or you're getting into a relationship with somebody that has, like we talked about this before, just like like you can fall in love with anybody. And if you fall in love with somebody that is flipping burgers, there should be a plan between you two to say, hey, eventually I want you to advance your job and to do more and become better. If that person at some point during that time is like, oh, well, this is all I want to do, that's going to be frustrating, because the plan is to become better. Like you just said, it's something that you're building. So we're trying to build, we want a dream home or whatever it is. You got to do better, to be better. Like you can't just keep doing that thing. Building your relationship, just connection. So like quality time, everybody should do it, whether you love it or not, if that's your love language or not. It should be something that you guys do to build together. Build yourself individually. Like the common goal of just your mental smartness and your mental strength. One of the ways to do that, if anybody's involved with church or involved with relationship with God, like building that as an individual, like building all these things as an individual, but then bringing them together. So like, hey, I'm becoming more smart on my own. Like someone that is always
smarter.
No, smarter.
More smart is smarter.
Either one. Like if you're with somebody that all they do is scroll.
Yeah.
And then they think that what they see is all of its truth. Oh, hey, did you know that? And they sound really dumb because all they talk about is like, oh, the celebrities and whatever. That's the only thing they talk about. That gets super annoying. And it's like, man, you are not growing. Like you are like so involved in people's lives that don't matter. And that gets frustrating. It's like, yeah, you're not growing as a person. Like, hey, go read a book. Go like watch something or gain a skill. Go do something. It's frustrating when you're somebody that's like really high end productive and you want to do things and the other person's just kind of like, I'm okay with just living and just being whatever. Mm-hmm. That's fine if that's what you want to do, but that's not what we like agree to like, grow. Once you're married and you have kids is like a common like growth piece that you both invest in and you grow it together. It just happens. And that's the dangerous one because you don't want to drop all the other things, like drop fitness, drop your faith, drop like your business and just put it all into the kids, because once the kids grow up and they're out of the nest, now you stopped building your relationship with each other. You stop building all the things that you used to build together, and you built it all into this kid that now they're grown and they leave. And now you have nothing in common with that person because the thing that you had in common was the kid, and now they're gone. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, it happens so often that the kid graduates high school, goes out to college, and the parents divorce because they stopped all the things that they did together, and their together became just the kid, or kids. So I would say, I think I hit your relationship with the other person. I think I missed. Physical fitness. Like both people should be. You
should be sexually attracted to that person, which includes, some sort of physical fitness, because no one's, like. Here, you go ahead and go to yours.
So this is the reason why I say this. There's multiple facets to it. So yes, you need to be attracted to that person, and if things go south with, they let gravity take hold too much and they're not doing their best, it's not my fault that if I lose attraction. Like there's nothing I can do about that. Like I was attracted to you because you were a certain way. Yes, you're not going to look like you were when we were first married. That's fine. But I just want to know that you're doing your absolute best to try and reverse the aging process or slow it down.
Because it's not just a physical change. It's like, you realize that there's a mental aspect change there too. You're like, you're not the same person.
Yeah, their mental toughness changes, their confidence changes, because they're like, oh, well, I had a friend. She had a husband that wouldn't go swimming with her because he was ashamed. Like she's super fit, and if he did swim, he was a t-shirt guy. And I'm sorry for all the guys out there that wear a t-shirt when they're swimming, but like, hey. Work out, get it together, be hot for your wife, because she wants that.
Yeah.
She might not say it. She might say, "Hey, I love you," and whatever else. But who doesn't want that? I mean, there's a very select few people that they're into that. That's fine. Yeah. They teach their own. But like for the most part, people want their significant other to be fit and physically attractive. There's a second part to that though, is that hey, if you really love the other person and you want to spend as much time as possible with them, don't get unhealthy and then go and die on them, because that sucks. Now you're leaving them, and what do they have? They've built their whole life around you, with you, and then you go and leave them because you just are selfish, and you're not wanting to give them everything in that sense. And then the other part that's even worse is, let's say that person gets injured and then they're not physically fit enough to take care of themselves. So now you got to do everything for them. So now you're putting this burden on them that you would have been able to at least shoulder some of that burden if you were fit enough to, like, still get around and take care of yourself and do things for yourself, because you stayed active and fit, and you wouldn't have been injured if you would have stayed fit. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, but like I said, there's multiple facets to it. But staying in shape has way more benefits than not.
You're also saving yourself financially.
Yeah.
Staying out of the hospital.
Yeah.
For the most part. Not paying for medications that you could otherwise, have reduced by just working out, walking, any of the stuff we talked about earlier.
Yeah. The basic stuff. You just stay basic. You don't have to be a supermodel. You don't have to be any of that stuff. You can be skinny. You don't have to be a really, a buff dude or anything like that. Just stay in shape so that you can do like the basic things that you need to do. Like I don't advocate for everybody to be bodybuilders. I don't advocate for everybody to grow and be bigger, but I do advocate for everybody to be strong and be able to handle themselves.
Yeah.
That don't need help from other people. But if you do need it, that's the opportunity. Like you have people around for that. But for the most part, you want to be able to physically take care of yourself.
Yeah. How do you go about arguments?
I learned a long time ago that if I win an argument, that I make her a loser, and I don't want to be married to a loser. So I've stopped trying to win arguments. Like even if I'm right, what good is that? What good is me giving her like the best? Like I gotcha. Like that was the one. That was the argument that destroyed the arguments. I gave you the line that convinced you that I was right. Very rarely is the other person gonna be like, man, yeah, you're right. I was wrong. Do you forgive me? Let's just make everything okay. No. They go into the other room, they storm off, and they're so upset because they're like, oh, my pride. And so to fix that is I've laid down my pride first. Like, okay, I know that ultimately I want to reconcile and I want this to be okay. So if that takes me to say like, hey, I'm sorry for these things. I'm sorry for the way I made you feel. Even though I don't think I did anything wrong, I'll say like, hey, I am sorry for the way that I made you feel. And I want to better understand what happened so I can not do it in the future. I think a lot of humbleness and a lot of apologizing first is the only way to fix that. You can't argue and win your way through it because it doesn't help. I've been married for 20 years, so it doesn't help. There's never been a time where I'm like, yes, I won, and I also won her over. No, I pushed her away just a little bit when you win.
Yeah.
So what about you? Like, what do you do with an argument? I told you.
That was the most recent one.
Oh.
Now, okay, no. It used to be like that. I was just like, yeah, because, I'm the youngest child. I got something to prove.
Yeah.
So even the relationship, it comes across that way sometimes. But what I've learned is to kind of like just chill. Like, most arguments, I just will stop talking. Because I know if I keep running my mouth, I'm going to say something stupid. I'm just like, okay, I need to stop real quick. I'll walk away and then I'll come back. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't even have to be long. I just walk away.
But do you communicate? Like, I think when
I say 1 second, I'm like 1 second.
Yeah. In that moment, if you just walk away, that's a bad thing. You got to be like, hey, like I'm gonna come back. Let me just give me a second, and I'll be back.
It's not like a walking away in a bad way where you're just like, nah, I'm out. It's like, give me a second. I go and I
Compose,
come back. Yeah, exactly. So you can just chill out for a second. Most people, you're not going to think correctly. Even if you are right, like we were saying, like you're going to say it in just like a jerkish way.
Yeah.
You just be like, yeah, got you.
And they still won't take it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've done that too. And I feel really good.
You do feel
I
good,
feel good.
But eventually you don't feel good.
Yeah. Then I'm like, man, that was kind of lame. It's like, you start thinking about like, dang it. You're like, if this was a movie, I'd be a jerk.
But are there ever times where you're like in an argument and you're losing and you're like, man, I'm losing. And then like, hey, like we can't finish this right now. I got to go to work or whatever. So you're driving away and you're like, I know what I should have said. I would have got him with this zinger. I would have got him. That happens all the time. And I'm like, I'm so glad that I left because that wouldn't have helped.
I don't do that as much anymore. I usually just let things go automatically. I'm just like, because I've spent so much mental energy doing that in past relationships where I'm just like thinking about it all day. I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna bring that up later. It's dumb because
Yeah.
think of how much energy you're wasting thinking about it, and then think of how much energy you're wasting holding on to that thought until you get back to that person.
Yep.
That's a lot of mental energy being spent there.
Yeah.
You're just like, shoot, I just spent 8 hours thinking about this one thing all day. I didn't even listen to anyone else.
Yeah.
You came back, you said it, and then you're like, dang, that was kind of lame because they were off on the next subject and I was still on the same one.
Yeah. And the chances are, if you're with somebody that is a forgive and forgetter, and like they're just like, whatever, like I still love them, I don't care.
Yeah.
They're over it. And then 8 hours later, after your work shift, you come back and you're like ready to do like round two, and they're just like, man, like I was done with this, and you're bringing this all back up. Like that's the worst. And then also, if you're someone that comes back and does that consistently, like, oh, there's time that passed, and you come back and you're right back in the same argument, you end up training that person like, oh, there's going to be a second wave.
Yeah.
And they're never like, you build this distrust of like, oh, there's going to be a second argument. So like building trust is a huge part of maintaining a relationship, and just building a safe space. I know that sounds so cliche, but a space where they can share their feelings and you won't get hurt. Like maybe they feel some type of way. You got to be like, okay, this is just the way they feel. Like I know that I'm not doing that, but let me help her understand or him understand why this happened and why she feels that way and what I didn't mean. Because most arguments is just misunderstanding. Because I think baseline, if you love each other, something happened to where you're like, I'm interpreting something they did some type of way that isn't even right.
Yeah.
So just let it go, and or ask questions. I think sometimes people go to the accusatory, they go to accuse first, and they're like, hey, you did this and blah, blah, blah. Instead of saying, hey, this happened. I don't know whether you meant it this way, but like, hey, can I get some clarification on why you said what you said or why you did what you did? And that changes that whole conversation.
Yeah. I want people to think about the conversation as if they were having it on like an Instagram post or a Facebook post on like some sort of political debate. Now, when you argue with someone on there, it's like the most incoherent, dumbest thing you've ever written, right? And so is the same thing coming from that person. Now, take that context and imagine you're saying that, to your significant other on there. So imagine it is literally that dumb.
Yeah.
So if you had some sort of like resolve argument in there, like you're looking for the resolve, you're not looking to win.
Yeah.
Then this makes me fun laugh. Then you'll have some peace.
Yeah. When I read stuff like that, like I get caught in the comments and I read somebody's argument and I'm like, wow, you guys sound so dumb right now.
When they're writing like, that's like the dumbest answer ever. Well, here's mine. They're like, ha ha ha, you're so lame. Like stuff like that.
Yeah, and they just fight like kids.
You think you're so smart.
Yeah, they're grown adults and they fight like kids, and then they twist each other's words and stuff like that. And that's like you can watch it, play out.
Watch it unfold. It's crazy.
You watch the whole thing unfold, but then you think the last argument you had with someone face to face, like you did the same thing. Oh yeah, see, you said this and that, like, but come on, you guys really aren't against each other. Like, just chill out. Take a moment to compose, and like I remember I made a conscious thought that before I get in an argument with my wife, like remind myself, okay, you love her. Okay, now talk to her. Because if I don't say that first, man, just like garbage comes out, like just, and it's just not a good starting spot.
Yeah, if you are the type of person to be fast to anger, you need to chill right then and there. Like, don't say anything, just calm down, take a step back, walk away like I do, and then come back to it, because whatever you're going to say in that moment is going to be really dumb. Even if you think in your head, like you're seeing it play out in your head, like I'm going to be really good right here, it's not going to be good.
Yeah. And here's the thing, you can be calm as you want, just like in the comments, you can be super calm and saying something, and the other person can be still popping off, saying dumb stuff, and you have to keep the composure to like keep even keeled, and that other person will eventually catch on, like, wow, they're not being, I'm not getting a rise out of the other person, and I need to chill out because they're not trying to attack me. They're actually trying to resolve this, and I'm the only one being the aggressor here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. That was like 5, 6 different points. I forget.
Yeah. I mean, we hit a bunch of different things.
But back to keeping it going. Like if you want the relationship, like you see, like I want to get married to this person, you have to decide and just stick with it. You have the arguments, doesn't matter. You have some differences, like small differences, let's say, not big ones. Big ones, you either have to come to some, conclusion that you both agree on something, or you separate. Because if you have, like we said, politics, religion, it almost never works.
Yeah, it's going into it. Yeah.
And if it does work, it'll only work for a certain amount of time. Eventually, it's gonna ruin your relationship.
I'll give you guys a free tip. This is a 20-year tip that you save you a lot of trouble and heartache. If any of you guys own a car, the car might not be broken down, but you do stuff like take it in for an oil change, you rotate the tires because you want to maintain it, you want to keep it going. Well, for couples, people are always like, oh, you're going to counseling or you're going to therapy or whatever it is. It's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's good when you're not arguing to even just have a chat with the other person and say like, hey, I just want to check in. I want to see how things are going. Is there anything that you think is unresolved? And ask the questions when you're not in a state of, anger, just to check in and to maintain it. Because if you allow some things, like maybe they're holding on to something that they're just like, oh, it's not big enough to worry about. And that thing just builds and builds and builds and builds. And then one day it erupts and it's like a year long of them just like piling something on, then it explodes. That's not good either. So like check in every once in a while and just do the maintenance, get it oil checked, rotate the tires, do what you need to do to maintain the relationship before it breaks down and there's an issue. And then now it's not moving anymore. And you're like, man, we need a whole engine overhaul and we can't even go anywhere. So check it. And sometimes it's good, find someone that you trust and just say, hey, can you sit down a conversation with us? We want to like, we've done this a few times and it doesn't work because one of us gets like angry or something like that. Sometimes you just need somebody like a third party that has nothing invested in it. Well, other than they're probably your friend or a trusted friend, and just say like, hey, just listen to this conversation. And sometimes it helps you to keep your cool because there's someone watching. Yeah. So you're like, okay, let me approach this a little bit better than I would if we were alone.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Free tip.
That was good. People use that.
I hope so, because I used it. And then the last thing I would say is, it doesn't matter how long you've been together, you got to keep learning who that person is, because especially women, they continually change all the time. Men, for the most part, they stay the same, like a different version of the same, but they stay the same for the most part. But women, they adapt and change a lot differently than men do. So guys, stay on your toes and know that you want her to stay the same. You're like, oh man, I hope she stays the same forever. Yeah. No, she'll change on you. Not necessarily in a bad way. You just don't realize that she's becoming somebody different, and you have to learn how to grow with that and grow in that. So,
yep, that's the podcast.
Bro, you gotta learn how to like smooth out that.
That's a good ending.
That exit. That's the podcast.
That's podcast. Goodbye.
Well, I hope you guys learned something from us today. Whenever we talk about relationships or just relating with other people, man, it is so deep. There's so many aspects to it. So if we ever miss something or there's something that needs to be clarified, man, please don't hesitate to ask us. We would love to follow up on that and do another video on it and answer your questions. If you do have those questions, just put them down in the comments. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for hanging out with us, and we will see you in the next podcast.